All right, so it has been about 2 weeks since I started my foray into learning JavaScript. And so as of now, I'm taking a course through Udemy called something like JavaScript 2024 from Zero to Expert. It's by this guy named Jonas Schmetman. And the course itself is just so well done, in my opinion. I think that he does a really good job of not only like explaining the syntax of JavaScript, but also I just went through, there's this entire 4-hour section on why JavaScript works and how it works. And to me, that has been really useful. And that was one of the things that I felt like was missing from platforms like Free Code Camp, is while Free Code Camp did a good job of going over the syntax, I never really got a real good understanding on why a lot of this stuff works. And frankly, you could argue that maybe you don't need to know the why that much, but for me, I like to know the why. And I like to know the underpinnings on how some of these things work. And so, I've been really enjoying this course. We kind of started off with just learning the basics, so learning the different data types, and we learned how to do if statements and different loops, for of loops, and what else? We learned, document object modification. Is that what it is? Manipulation, document object manipulation. I'm still getting a handle of some of the terms here. We're going through and just figuring out, or I'm figuring out just how to use JavaScript. And the whole reason I'm doing this is so that I can have more implement more functionality in the websites that I design. So I felt like I was getting a good understanding of Webflow, which was the main platform I was using to build websites. But instead of going the direction of trying to make these crazy looking designs, which is, valid, I want it to go more the direction of how do I get more functionality out of these. And so that's why I just decided to do the JavaScript course. And so the other thing that I like about the course is that there's like different coding challenges within the course that I'm doing. So it's not just a blind, just copy what the instructor does and try to learn that way. I mean, there is a lot of that. Interspersed within the course, though, are these coding challenges that I do. And so that really helps because I have to then, apply what I learn. It's one thing to visually see what the instructor does and copy what he does, but it's a whole other thing to actually then have a scenario where I have to apply what I learned. And so that's been really useful to me. And the other thing is that we also design kind of like more in-depth projects within the course. Like the first project that I learned with like the document object manipulation or whatever is we basically built a game that like a game with a UI. And so it was basically, what was it? It was a game to where you input a number or rather the system, the game generates a number and I have to try to guess what that number is. So the number is something from 1 to 20. And so I input a number and then it lets me know if I'm too high, too low, and then it'll let me know if I win. And so that was the first thing that I learned. And it was really cool because it was like, even though it was a really simple game, it was like, damn, I built something that actually serves a purpose, right? I mean, it's a small purpose. You could argue it's a purpose of entertainment, but that's a worthwhile purpose anyway. And it was really neat to be able to do that and to go through and figure out the logic of how to, create the rules for this game in JavaScript. And that was really, it was rewarding for me. And, I thought that was something we learned within the first few modules of the course. And so I thought that was really cool. I thought that for the majority of this course, it was going to be a lot of a lot of learning code without any UI. And, for the first couple modules, it's like that, but we dove pretty quickly into, all right, how do we use JavaScript within the context of user interface? And so that was really neat. And then the next project that we did was definitely more complex. It was called the Pig Game. And so this was a more complex game where it's essentially 2 players, and you roll a dice, and each time you roll a dice, you cumulatively add the value of whatever that dice is. And so the whole goal is that the first player that gets to 100 wins. However, if you roll a 1, then your score will basically go to 0 for that round. So basically, if I roll a 6, a 3, and a 2, I add those things together, so now my score is 11. But if I roll a 1, well, now I'm back to 0, and then it goes to the other player. But you can also choose to hold. So if I rolled a 6, a 3, and a 2, which would be 11, and I held, then I keep those points, and then it goes to the other player. So that's kind of like how it works. So you're basically, it's a game of chance, and you're trying, each player is trying to get to 100 as quickly as possible, basically. So yeah, that was a really complex game. And it's really interesting because whereas, trying to think how to say this, like with typical web flow development, which is really what I'm accustomed to doing, so doing things within Webflow and not doing a whole lot of custom code, there's not a lot of like logical thinking I have to do. I mean, there is from the standpoint of figuring out structure and things like that, but when it comes to like algorithmic logical thinking, there's not a ton that I really have to think about. So like with what I'm doing now, it's like a totally different way of thinking. And it's hard. Like, I'll be honest, like what I'm doing now is way harder than anything that I've learned before. Like learning Webflow, in my opinion, is, at least from a logical thinking standpoint, isn't that hard. With learning what HTML elements do, what CSS attributes do. I mean, for some people it might be difficult, but for me, maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I can visualize that really well. But with JavaScript, some things I don't really, I can't visualize that well. Like right now we're working with like objects and how we deconstruct objects and creating functions to deconstruct objects. And if none of that sounds familiar to you, well, it certainly wasn't familiar to me a week ago, and I'm certainly not even familiar with it now. It's very complex, and the further I get into it, the harder it is to visualize. But I do have fun with it. It can get frustrating when I can't get things to work, but I do find it to be rewarding. And yeah, I think that's a good sign that I'm having fun with this. And even though some of the sections that I'm going through within this course are a bit of a slog, I can see the value in it, and I really see where this can add a ton of functionality to the designs that I make, and that's really what I want, is to be able to implement, things that serve a purpose. There's value to designing landing pages and generating high converting landing pages. But I guess I just want to do something a little more than that. And I want to be able to implement some of these more, what I would consider to be higher end or maybe higher complexity functionality that require JavaScript or whatever I learned past that. So yeah, it's a cool journey. I think I'm about halfway through the course now. However, I think the latter half of the course is going to be a lot more complex than the first half, so I think it's going to take me a lot longer to get through. I think overall there's 70 hours of video content, but for me, I often have to pause the video to kind of figure out what the hell's going on and to make sure I'm not falling too behind with the instructor. But yeah, I just wanted to give an update on what I've been working on so far, and yeah. I'm liking it, and I'll keep you updated. And if I make other cool stuff with JavaScript, then I'll be sure to share it on this channel. But yeah, if you're also on a coding journey, then maybe this resonates with you. But yeah, I'm having a good time, and I'll keep you updated. All right, I think that's it. I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.